I rode in an Uber that took me to a haunted destination, and what I found was unbelievable. I never should have opened that door. It all started like any other Thursday night. I was lounging on my couch, scrolling through my phone, the glow of the screen casting a familiar light in my dim living room. The chirping of crickets outside made everything feel cozy. Then I felt it. A chill ran down my spine when I got the notification. My driver was waiting outside. Stepping into the cold night air, the world felt different. The shadows seemed thicker. The streetlights flickered like they were shivering. As I slipped into the back seat of the Uber, my mind buzzed with thoughts. Just a simple ride. Just a simple destination. But then I glanced at the driver. His eyes, they didn't look right. They were too dark. Like they were hiding something beneath the surface. I shifted uneasily, the car pulled away from my neighborhood. The hum of the engine felt like a heartbeat, pulsating beneath the weight of silence. The driver didn't speak. Just stared straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. I glanced out the window. Darkness enveloped the world around us. The trees loomed like sinister giants, their gnarled branches stretching toward the sky, fingers of shadows reaching out. Then came the first strange sound, a low whisper, almost imperceptible, but it sent waves of dread racing through me. My heart hammered. I tried to dismiss it. Just nerves, I told myself. But the air turned thick and cold, wrapping around me like a wet blanket. And then I felt it. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I squinted into the rearview mirror. The driver's eyes glinted, but not with reflection. There was something else. Something lurking. I could almost hear the shadows creeping closer, whispering secrets meant for only the darkest nights. The car jolted. A sudden bump on the road. I gasped, my grip tightening around my phone, the only lifeline I had. Where are we going? I managed to croak, my voice laced with fear. No response. Just the steady thrum of the engine and, was that a low growl? Panic began to swell in my chest. What was happening? The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating twisted, abandoned buildings that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Each one looked like a tomb, waiting to swallow secrets whole. I could feel something in the air, static, heavy, like the moments before a storm, and then it happened. A flash of movement, a flicker in the distance. Did I see a figure? My breath quickened. I leaned forward in my seat, my heart racing. The driver didn't react, just kept driving. Suddenly, a loud bang. My heart dropped as the Uber lurched forward. I glanced out the window, my body rigid with fear. The figure stood there, just outside the glow of the headlights. Was it watching? I couldn't tell. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice was trapped in my throat. Fear wrapped around me like a vice. What was waiting for me at the end of this ride? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The shadows outside grew denser as we passed, pressing against the car like a suffocating fog. I could still feel the weight of that figure watching us, its presence throbbing in the silence of the night. My heart raced louder than the engine, and with each passing moment, I fought the urge to scream, "Where are we?" I whispered, the question barely escaping my lips, but the driver remained statue-like, unmoving, as if he had become one with the vehicle. Outside, the landscape morphed into an unrecognizable wilderness, twisted trees bearing their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for something precious. With every jolt of the car, the whispering resumed, low and urgent, cautioning me against uttering a sound, and then the growling intensified. I was sure this time it was coming from within the car, a deep rumble that resonated in my bones. I clutched my phone like a talisman, knowing it was the only thing that could connect me back to the world I once knew, and I realized I had to use it. Summoning every ounce of courage I could muster, I pressed in the emergency number. While the phone rang, I stole a glance at the driver's reflection in the mirror. His eyes were now completely black, void of any humanity, and it struck me that I was no longer in a car, but in an iron cage with a predatory beast. "Please," I managed to choke out, "let me out." But the growling escalated into a full snarl, erupting from within the depths of the man. His lips peeled back, revealing teeth that glinted with an otherworldly sheen, mirroring the abyss in his eyes. My heart pounded, a primal part of me screamed to flee, but the door handle felt sealed with dread, and then, against my better judgment, I looked outside again. The headlights illuminated the figure once more, standing in the road now, unnaturally still, almost solid, but the ice it was the eyes that froze me, two burning embers filled with malevolence. It stepped closer, and I saw it more clearly, a woman, her body contorted unnaturally, as though her bones had been rearranged by some unseen hand. Her mouth moved in erratic shapes, parched lips parting, fissures in her skin dripping darkness. "Turn back," she mouthed, each syllable an echo of agony. Abruptly, the driver slammed on the brakes, sending me hurtling forward against the seatbelt. The car skidded to a stop just inches from the shadow woman. My breath hitched as I looked back at the driver. His head was tilted unnaturally, almost too far, as though his neck were threatening to snap. "Help me, please." "She's going to," but my plea was drowned out by a deafening roar, reverberating through the air like the shriek of 1,000 lost souls. The woman lunged at the car, her fingers stretching long and claw-like, and just as I braced for impact, the sound of tearing metal rippled through the darkness. The air thickened with a sorrow that wrapped around my throat like a vice. Talons scraped against the glass, leaving trails of vaporous black that pulsated with an unholy energy. My eyes darted to the driver, whose face transformed into a hideous grin filled with hunger. And then, in a wordless moment, the night cracked open. The creature, her face twisted into a grotesque mask, began to blur, fading in and out like a static-filled image, revealing other glimpses beneath. I saw pouring shadows, lost faces, and nameless horrors swallowed by an abyss I couldn't comprehend. A sudden jolt shook the car, and the world outside twisted as though gravity itself lost its grip. Without warning, I was thrown across the seat, and as I tried to cling to something, anything, the world spun like a record ready to shatter. Just as darkness threatened to envelop me, the sound of shattering glass erupted. I gasped, grasping wildly at the remnants of a reality that began to splinter. I turned to the driver, terror knitting my insides tightly. He was gone, replaced by a hollow form, the familiar scent of despair engulfing me. I scrambled in my seat, eyes wide, heart racing. The woman stood at the open door now, a harbinger of death with an outstretched hand. "Join us," she whispered, her voice a serpentine hiss laced with promises I never wanted to hear. Every instinct cried for me to run, to escape, but my body felt paralyzed. And with a sickening realization, I knew I could not leave this place without facing the horrors it demanded. With her other hand, she beckoned me, and the world around me warped as shadows coiled and writhed. I barely breathed as I edged backwards, but the Uber suddenly bucked beneath me, a mechanical beast fighting its own demons, and in that moment, the car lurched again, sending me spiraling into darkness before everything went dead silent. Just the beating of my heart echoed in the stillness, and then the phone lit up, a burst of light in the abyss. A new notification blinked dimly, but the name unfurling across the screen shattered my heart. "Your ride has arrived," and then the growling resumed, louder than ever. The world swirled into a dizzying spiral of unreal hues as I clutched the phone, a portal of sanity inscribed in the cruel darkness around me. My eyes darted between the screen and the woman inching closer, her outstretched fingers writhing like serpents ready to strike. "Your ride has arrived." Each word felt like a verdict passed in silence, echoing through the stillness, resonating beyond the immediate horror. My heart raced against my ribs, but curiosity nudged at me stronger than fear. "An Uber?" The driver had vanished, taken by whatever dreadful force had conjured this nightmare. Surely, I could find safety in this message, if only I dared to respond. The growling morphed to a hissing, a sinister whisper threading through the air as if the shadows themselves were mocking my hesitation. "Your ride has arrived," the message repeated in mocking tones, the rhythm lulling me into a false sense of security. I took a breath that felt heavy with dread and risked peeking outside the car, but the moment I did, my gasp broke free, choking me. The figure of the woman loomed larger now, her silhouette blending with the shadows around her as if she were a part of the night. She smiled, or what resembled a smile, showcasing those impossibly sharp teeth that glimmered ominously. "You cannot hide," she hissed, her voice chilling against the growing whispers that surrounded me. Before I could think to react, the phone slipped from my grasp, tumbling to the floor with a dull thud that resonated in the unmoving air. Darkness enveloped me, thickening the space between breaths. Heart pounding, I reached for my door in a futile attempt to escape, but the latch resisted, confirming that whatever force ruled this dreadful place had no intention of letting me go. "Once you enter, you can never leave," the woman murmured, and the shadows around her trembled, shifting with a life of their own, as if they were drawn to the wretched energy she exuded. Panic clawed at my chest, and I fumbled to retrieve my phone from the floor, panic sharpening my desperation. As I grasped it, a new notification flickered at the top of the screen, another ride request, but this time, the name that hovered there shattered my sanity. It read, "The Man in the Grey Suit." My mind scrambled an image of that figure from my past, haunting like a ghost. I had read about him in urban legends, a malevolent spirit taking the form of a driver for those who dared to summon it. The tales warned of those who were taken by him, never to return. A sob escaped my lips, echoing like a death knell. "Ride?" the woman questioned, as if she could glean my thoughts. She stepped closer still, her breath icy as she leaned in, an unbearable weight pressing against the air between us. "He waits for you, but you are mine already." The growling fluctuated again, a creature's hunger vibrating through the stillness. I tore my gaze from the woman, thrusting my attention back to the phone, desperately willing my feet to find the courage to move. But before I could comprehend the spiraling consequence of this moment, I felt something claw at my soul, a deep, primal terror that echoed through the very core of my being. The darkness thrummed around us, a pulse that quickened with each heartbeat, and I could feel the car trembling beneath me as if it, too, sensed the impending arrival of something far more sinister. "Join us, and you will be free," she promised seductively, her voice a fog of sweet poison. With every soul taken, he becomes stronger. In that split second, the power of choice hung over me like a low-hanging storm cloud, threatening to crack and unleash chaos. The growling morphed into a deafening roar, a cacophony of lost souls drowning beneath the weight of despair, and beyond the woman, a silhouette began to form within the inky blackness, blurring against the edges of the car. The hallowed figure of the man in the grey suit appeared from the shadows, his face obscured but his presence unmistakable. A thin smile played on his lips, as though he reveled in the fear he ignited. I felt the heat rise within my chest, a blazing reminder of life that fought against the enveloping darkness. With a fierce determination lighting my every move, I slammed my body against the door, battling against the shadows imprisoning me, screaming internally for freedom. "No! I won't be your puppet!" I shouted, adrenaline fueling my resolve. In an instant, time distorted, and the air around me stilled, freezing every shard of fear in my veins. The woman's eyes flared with fury, the shadows contorting in eerie response. Suddenly, the car jerked violently as the passenger door flung open, the wind howling in as if beckoning me to jump into the nightmarish embrace of the unknown, leaving no room for hesitation. But before I could react, my gaze zeroed in on the man in the grey suit, the last glimmer of humanity flickering in his icy demeanor. "Step out and embrace what lies ahead. You will belong to them, one way or another," he beckoned, voice sharp as glass. But as I teetered on the edge of decision, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the static-laden air, shattering the moment before I could leap back into the realms of the living. As darkness clawed its way toward me, I faced one final chilling realization. Behind his figure, shadows writhed, forming into more than just the unholy echoes of despair. They were lost souls, each beckoning with hollow eyes, waiting for Their turn to claim what was left of my humanity, and then everything went blank as I felt the world tip beneath me. I was falling, endless, into an abyss of darkness where I sensed I would become just another shadow, where my next scream might be swallowed whole. I plummeted into the cold expanse, a vast emptiness that swallowed sound just as heavily as it absorbed warmth. The fall seemed eternal, time bending as the weight of dread pressed harder against my chest. The moment felt surreal, like a premonition of something far worse lurking beyond the threshold of consciousness, waiting to pounce the instant I landed. Suddenly, I jolted awake, gasping for air, yet the familiar beat of a heart racing with fear faded into a disorienting silence. I blinked, attempting to make sense of the surroundings, but it was nothing like before. The car was gone, replaced by an expanse of shadowy landscape stretching endlessly in every direction. An ethereal fog clung to the ground, shrouding my vision and swirling like a sentient being. Adrenaline coursed through me, igniting the instinct to run, but where could I flee in this liminal space? Every step forward echoed like a drum of impending doom, reverberating against unseen walls of terror. My breath emitted clouds of vapor that hung in the cool air, dissipating before I could gather the courage to call out, "Help!" I shouted, though the word felt weak and vacuous as it faded into the obscurity. Only silence answered, a heavy, suffocating silence that wrapped around me like shackles. As I took a slow, trembling step, I caught sight of the silhouettes rising from the fog, the lost souls I had feared. Figures materialized, their faces twisted in agony, mouths moving soundlessly as if they were trapped in a yawn of despair, eternally grappling with an unspeakable sorrow. Their hollow eyes reflected anguish, but there was something more, insatiable hunger lurking beneath the surface, as if they craved company in their torment. That I stumbled backward, heart racing, the creeping sensation of being watched clawing at my skin. Whispers slithered through the air, faint at first, then building to a cascade of wailing that drowned out my sanity. Join us, they chorused, the sound rancid with despair, compelling me to step deeper into the fog. Before I could process their grotesque invite, the disturbing sound of a low chuckle broke through the cacophony. The man in the gray suit emerged from the haze, each step measured and deliberate, his gaze fixed on mine with an unsettling intensity. His facial features were still obscured, but he wore a grin that chilled my very marrow. "Welcome, my dear passenger," he spoke, his voice smooth yet tinged with malevolence. "So many eager souls to greet you. They've been waiting." That I turned to flee, but found myself encircled by the shadows, a living theme of anguish intent on trapping me. "You can't go back now," the man purred, his tone soothing yet dripping with a certainty that sent fear spiraling through my veins. "Once you come to this realm, there's no escaping the pull. You're one of us, part of the lament that drapes this world." With a roar of desperation surging within, I dashed between the dismal figures, trying to push my way past them. But they reached out with skeletal hands, their fingers brushing against my skin, icy and electric with sorrow. The connection sent jolts of despair curving through my mind, memories resurfacing, moments of regret, pain I thought long buried. Their weight crashed over me like a wave, drowning me in a sea of guilt suffused with a growing realization. The figures were not merely lost, they were reflections of my own failures, my greatest fears materialized. "No," I gasped as I stumbled to the ground, as waves of crackling energy vibrated around us. I could feel the shadows beckoning. Why are you doing this? They embrace us because we are theirs," the man replied, his smile widening until it seemed to devour the darkness. "You've known despair, it's familiar to you. Now you will bring it to others. No. I won't be chained." I screamed, scrambling backward as I grappled with the shadows, slick like oil, threatening to drag me down permanently, the disarray of anguished faces flickering around me. In my panic, I felt something sharp beneath my fingers, cool and metallic, a shard of glass, perhaps abandoned from some forgotten nightmare. I grasped it tightly, rising to face the encroaching sea of shadows. "Get away from me!" I screamed, waving the glass like a talisman against the suffocating darkness. The creaturely chorus of screams grew louder, vibrating with power, resonating through me as if the souls of the damned approached, desperate for retribution. A spectral wail engulfed the fog, the thick atmosphere crackled, pressing down with an ancient, insatiable cruelty. In my fury, I lunged toward the figures, hoping to shatter their hold, to wake from this twisted vision of my own making. I plunged the shard into the wispy form nearest to me, a scream pouring from its mouth, echoing into infinity, but as it dissolved into the ether, the others surged, a wave of tumultuous wrath crashing down upon me, faces contorting with fury, and the man's laughter echoed behind me as a haunting reminder that I was now drawn into their eternal chorus of despair. Just as I thought I had glimpsed a chance of freedom, a force yanked at my consciousness. I was hoisted into the air as shadows wrapped around me, pulling tighter a stranglehold on the very essence of who I was, and amidst this grip, I heard a final whisper caressing my ear, soft yet unmistakably sinister, "Welcome home." Then, the world around me imploded in a spiral of darkness, dragging me down into a deeper abyss where I could see nothing, only the gaping maw of oblivion waiting with insatiable hunger. Then, silence pulsated, but not for long. Something far worse than the shadows awaited. A chilling laugh intertwined with the darkness sent ice through my veins. "Your true ride has just begun." A piercing brightness washed over me, blinding in its intensity, but it wasn't the cleansing light of salvation. No, it was a harsh glare emanating from a gathering storm that brewed above me, a swirling mass of clouds as dark as ink, roiling with angry energy. The air shimmered with electric anticipation, crackling like the space just before a thunderclap. I sat up abruptly, the ground beneath me hard and unyielding, coated in darkness. The shadows were gone, but the dread lingered like bile at the back of my throat. I was alone again, but emptiness gnawed at the edges of my sanity. Had I truly escaped, or was this another trick of the spirit realm? My senses sharpened, and I became aware of the low hum of energy rippling through the air, a quiet lullaby of malevolence tucked just beneath the surface. I blinked rapidly as the light dimmed to a sickly twilight. Shadows crawled across the terrain, restoring the echo of despair. I forced myself to stand, realizing the landscape was now an alien world, a warped reflection of my own reality where everything felt upside down, distorted. In front of me lay an old, cracked road, lined with gnarled trees that twisted upward like hands in perpetual prayer, their skeletal branches clutching at the sky in agony. The ground was a patchwork of dark soil and broken glass, glinting like shards of forgotten dreams. As I stepped forward, a sense of wrongness clinging to me like an unwelcome shroud. Suddenly, the whispering began anew. Not voices this time, but the rustling of unseen creatures that slithered just out of view. I could feel eyes on metazens of them watching and waiting with an insatiable curiosity. The cold fingers of dread traced my spine. And then I felt it, a cold breath against the nape of my neck, so gentle it could have been a breeze, so intimate it felt like a caress. I whipped around, expecting to face whatever horror lurked behind. To my surprise, nothing stood there but the quiet path stretching endlessly into the gloom. My heart pounded as I scanned the eerie surroundings, dread pooling in my stomach like ice, transforming every shadow into a lurking menace. "Hello?" I whispered, tongue dry. It felt foolish. You didn't call out into the void of unease, or you'd invite something worse. A rustle echoed from the trees, like whispered secrets passed between ancient spirits. I took a cautious step forward, half expecting a beast to leap from the underbrush. Instead, something tumbled to my feet, a small wooden doll, its limbs crudely carved, distorted yet eerily human. It wore a smile so grotesque it sent shivers racing down my spine, black buttons for eyes glistening in the dim light. As fear gripped me, I felt a surge of anger rising to meet it. "Why? Why are you toying with me?" I shouted at the trees, my voice breaking. But the woodland merely absorbed my outrage, the silence amplifying my despair. Suddenly, the air grew heavy, thick with malevolence. The doll's mouth snapped open. Dark smoke billowed out, swirling and coiling, forming into a face I recognized all too well. It was my own, twisted by agony and despair. "Why did you leave us?" it asked, the voice a pitchy screech that clawed at the fabric of my consciousness. "You abandoned your past, but it clings to you, tighter than any shadow. You carry us with you and will pay. No." I shrieked, backing away, that terrible pull towards the blackened woods holding me captive with dread. "I didn't leave you. My protests fell flat, swallowed by yet another gale, washing away my resolve. From the shadows, I glimpsed a figure, the man in the gray suit, his smirk outlined against the eerie sky, watching with gleeful anticipation. "She's just starting to realize, isn't she?" he hissed, his voice echoing around me like thunder. "Every choice, every moment of fear has brought her to this very place." That I stumbled again, tearing my gaze from his shadowy figure. Behind me, the air pulsed and swelled, shadows deepening as the landscape shifted. "Join us!" the doll wailed, and the chorus of tortured cries filled the air, vibrating in a frequency that threatened to shatter my mind. "Your past cannot be hidden. It will consume you." I turned and fled down the path, the landscape warping impossibly, branches reaching like grotesque hands, shrouded in the ghostly whispers of my regrets. Just then, I tripped over something soft. Darkness pulsed around me, and I fell hard. A hand, ice-cold and clammy, wrapped around my ankle. I screamed, and the ground beneath me belched forth a chaotic maw of hungry shadows that pulled at my limbs, grasping and gnashing like 1,000 fangs. With a frantic surge, I tore myself free, but the grasp of icy fingers still lingered, etching fear deep into my bones as I propelled myself forward. However, the road twisted ahead, reforming into a fork, two paths beckoning like yawning graves. But then, from one of the paths, I heard a familiar voice, one I thought I had lost forever, echoing with all the pain and betrayal I had inflicted. "You came back for me, didn't you, Anna?" I gasped, heart racing. A figure lurked in the shadows, just beyond the veil of darkness, where her silhouette danced, a phantom hovering at the brink of light and shadow, torn between worlds. Her smile was a reflection of the doll's, full of warmth yet distorted with anguish. "It's your turn," she whispered, a sultry lure gliding through the suffocating air. "The shadows want you, just like they wanted me." And before the screams of the Forsaken drowned out my thoughts, before I could comprehend whether she was a savior or another tormentor, the road erupted into chaos. Suddenly, before I could make a choice, the earth cracked, swallowing the ground beneath me, dragging me into the yawning chasm of despair. The echoes of her laughter twirled like a wicked tune surrounding me as the void embraced me, whispering promises of eternal anguish. Then, everything collapsed into darkness, and I was left with a single thought: some bonds are meant to be broken, while others tether us to our hell. And then came the laughter, deep, resonant, and ominously familiar, as the shadows closed in, eager to enlighten me. Before I could catch my breath, the plummet through the ground seemed to stretch into eternity. I felt weightless, suspended in a vast expanse of black, the kind of darkness that blinds everything: the soul, the heart, the mind. It devoured me whole, leaving no mark of my existence, and yet a sensation whispered in the fog of my thoughts. The hunger of the shadows persisted. Then, abruptly, my body slammed down onto what felt like cold stone, sending waves of pain through every nerve. The air erupted with a cacophony of whispers, thousands of voices overlapping in a tumultuous storm of fear and regret that burrowed into my skull. I winced, clutching my head, desperate to silence their cries, but the shadows only thickened, wrapping around me like chains. "Welcome," a mocking voice echoed, smooth like tar and sharper than broken glass. It slithered around me, seeping into my skin, vibrating with each word as if they were incantations. "You've come home." Panic surged through me, and I shot to my feet, bracing against an unseen wall. I was in a chamber, cold and damp, filled with remnants of memories and glimmers of half-familiar faces that glanced at me from the corners of my mind, too fleeting to grasp. Figures flickered in and out of view, fragments of lost souls trapped in purgatory. Long-forgotten echoes stirred within them, fragments of anguish reflecting my worst fears. That I took a staggering step back, the chamber illuminated only by the flickering light of phosphorescent growths that clung to the surface of the walls like malignant tumors. Each step felt like a violation of sacred ground as the figures began to form. They surrounded me, their mouths opening in unison, not to speak, but to reveal the anguish that had become their existence, a surreal choir of empty eyes and gaping mouths. "Why did you come?" they chanted, their voices blending into a melody of despair. "You think you can escape the bond? Leave me alone," I shouted, turning sharply to face the blackened depths where I could sense more than see the well of shadows swirling, awaiting my surrender. But instead of retreating, they thickened, lurking in layers as the air grew heavier, saturated with despair. "Your fate is intertwined," a haggard figure hissed from among the crowd, its face shrouded in shadows, just a silhouette lacking identity yet brimming with intent. "What is done cannot be undone. Who are you?" A word slipped out of my trembling mouth, a plea, a challenge. My heart thundered like a drum roll leading to my demise. The figure stepped closer, and I caught the glint of glassy eyes hollowed by time. "We were forgotten, lost in the depths of your memory. You walked away, but we cannot." They lunged at me, the coldness of their grasp wrapping around my body, dragging me into a labyrinthine echo of my past, the choices I had made, my abandonment of the very essence that made me human. Each memory was a thread, binding me to them, weaving through this torment. Suddenly, I was thrust back, flying through time, and memories bombarded me. A sunset at the park with Anna, laughter mingling with the warm evening air, stark contrasts to this bitter darkness. A sudden chill shot through me as I recalled the last glance we exchanged, the anger, the betrayal that had severed us like a frayed rope. "Remember?" A multitude of voices erupted, pulling me deeper into torment. "You left us behind." Images began to flash around me like a kaleidoscopic nightmare. Anna smiling one moment, her face twisting into the grotesque smile of the doll the next, a testament to the horror of what awaited me in the distortions of this realm. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air heavy with dread. As I reached for air, the blood-chilling laughter echoed again, filling the chamber with the weight of its menace. I wrestled against the shadowy hands that sought to claim me, gasping desperate prayers for freedom. But then, a glimmer of hope flickered as a figure emerged from the Chosen outline of familiarity threading through the darkness. "Help me, Anna!" I screamed, my voice swallowed by the relentless tide of fear. "That's not me," the distorted reflection of her voice mocked, just an echo caught in the tangle of shadows, intertwining, blending with those lost souls. "I can't take you back." In a frenzy, I grasped at the solid air, pleading with the depths to return me to the sunlight, to the choices that led away from this despair. But the shadows howled in protest. An unseen force yanked me backward, dislocating memories from my grasp. "Join us!" they cried, the walls vibrating with their anguish, and the chamber began to crack apart, fissures splitting open to unveil agonizing horrors beyond comprehension. Then came the piercing laughter, the laughter that bore the weight of all my sins reverberating through the cavern, drowning everything in its path. "You brought them here!" the figure shrieked, and the shadows converged upon me, each claw bearing the weight of the choices made. "You cannot escape who you are." With that, the ground opened beneath me, stripping away the floor and leaving me dangling on the precipice of oblivion, held only by the smallest thread of hope. I caught a glimpse of something writhing in the darkness below, teeth snapping like jaws of a hellish beast. The shadows howled as my grip faltered, the ancient suffocation beckoning me towards the grains of hell. My breath caught in my throat, and in that moment, I realized the true horror that awaited me. His was not merely an end, it was a beginning of something far darker. Then everything went silent, and the laughter echoed one last time, haunting, familiar, and full of promises. I slipped. I felt the world around me dissolve into oblivion as I fell through that gaping maw. It felt as though time suspended, a breath caught in the throat of fate. Darkness wrapped around me, not suffocating but inviting, as if the shadows in their malevolence were whispering sweet nothings, offering escape from the torment of memory. Then abruptly, I dropped onto solid ground. What I now realized was more a reflection of hell than any earthly surface. At first, echoes of the cacophony still clung to me, but slowly they morphed into an unsettling silence, a pregnant pause in which I could hear the trickling of what era mockery of tranquility in this dreadful place. Glancing around the grim chamber, I noticed the grotesque shapes of once human forms twisted by despair now standing far away, their faces solemn, a congregation of the damned. They would watch me from the corners of their tortured existence, mouths twisting in silent prayers for release, yet knowing they would never truly escape. A sensation prickled at my skin, a perverse sketch of ghostly fingers dancing just beyond the edges of my perception. Each breath I took felt like an invocation, a summoning that brought forth shadows skittering just out of sight. I hesitated, caught between despair and the primal urge to flee, but my legs wouldn't move. They seemed as rooted as the grotesque figures emerging from deeper recesses of the chamber, each one more contorted than the last, trapped in an eternal cycle of torment and revelation. A low growl cut through the air, sending shivers racing down my spine. It emanated from the darkness farthest away. An unholy glimpse of crimson eyes glittered like embers in a dying fire. I turned, terrified but compelled to seek clarity amidst chaos, needing to understand what sought me in this darkened pit of desolation. "Why do you run?" a voice hissed, scraping at my ears like nails on a chalkboard. The tone was familiar, like the whisper of a long-lost friend warped by agony. "You carry our weight. The choices you made are shackled to your spirit. There is no escape, help me. Please." My plea was a feeble sound, slurring against the cacophony of whispers that swirled around me. A shadow stepped closer, revealing a figure that smoldered with darkness yet bore an unmistakable resemblance to Anna. My heart twisted painfully in my chest. You left me," she said, each word draped in sorrow and malice. "And you think you can reclaim what you abandoned? We are forever entwined." With every word she uttered, I felt the life I had lived unravel, the memories I had tucked away flickering like dying stars. The chamber trembled around me, and I stumbled as the air thickened, laced with the stench of decay and betrayal. "Why do you think I am here?" Anna's voice twisted into a sinister echo, her smile stretching wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth in a grin that should never have seen the light of day. "You fed this place, nourished its hunger with your ignorance. Look around you." I blinked, and the chamber warped. The sad faces of those lost souls melted into my own likeness, their eyes dull but filled with unspoken anguish. Flashbacks flooded my mind, the moments I chose indifference, the friends I had neglected, the love I had scorned, the apparitions of those I had left behind. Beyond their vacant stares, dread curled into my gut like a vine leading deeper into despair. I fought back, bile rising in my throat. "No. I'm not like you. I didn't choose this." The twisted laugh echoed again, reverberating through the air and lashing against my sanity. "You are us. We are your choices made flesh. Your reality was a veil that protected you, but now it has been torn asunder. Welcome home." The chamber heaved, and the walls began to bleed shadow, tendrils snaking toward me, reaching with a life of their own. They pulsed with each breath I took, suffocating my will beneath layers of memories clawing for recognition. "Join us." The chorus of shadows howled as one, a malignant chant reverberating through the space. "Accept what you are." With a burst of adrenaline, I spun, bolting through the shifting tides of despair. I could barely discern a path, the floor shifting beneath me as whispers poured from every corner, pulling me into fathomless depths. I flung myself forward, ignoring the clamoring agony of the memories elongating toward me, clawing at my skin, begging for retribution. The sharp snap of something behind me echoed as bones cracked in the darkness. They were coming. I stumbled headlong into a chasm of shadow-filled corridors, the murmurs cascading into tumultuous shouts of warning and anguish. "Turn back," Anna's voice now a powerful entreaty. "You cannot confront what you've woven in this world." Ignoring her warnings, I dashed deeper, adrenaline coursing through me as I reached the end of the corridor. It was then I saw it in the utter darkness. A silhouette loomed larger than the rest, an amorphous mass writhing, pulsating with a heartbeat all its own. That I took a step forward to confront it, terror mingling with determination. But as crystalline tears streamed down my face, the shape shifted, drawing closer, revealing endless pits of despair, mouths opening, howling a thousand anguished cries that resonated one unbreakable truth: no escape. "You belong here." My heart dropped as the realization hit. This wasn't the end. It was, in fact, the beginning of something much more horrifying. Then the shape lunged forward, and the abyss came rushing toward me like a tidal wave of nightmares, and with a deafening silence, everything went black. In the impenetrable blackness, the weight of the world seemed to be pressing down on me, squeezing the breath from my lungs as I lay suspended somewhere between consciousness and oblivion. Time lost all me, an Inga fluid construct slipping through my fingers. It was a void filled with the muffled echoes of screams and cries, the shadows whispering dark secrets I could scarcely comprehend. Moments or eternities later, I was thrust back into a reality that was all too familiar yet unsettlingly distorted. I gasped for air, my lungs burning with the effort. As my vision adjusted, I found myself sprawled on a damp stone floor, the air thick with a clammy chill that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat around me. I pushed myself into an upright position, scanning the room frantically for answers, for any semblance of safety. Before me lay a warped reflection of the place I had just fled. The grotesque chamber was now altered, mutable. As if the very walls were alive, curving and shifting like the undulating surface of a restless sea. There was a flickering light breaking through the shadows, illuminating splatters of what I could only assume was blood, thick, dark, and cursed. The sweet, metallic scent filled my nostrils, twisting my stomach into knots, torn between worlds. Are we? A voice slithered into my ear, sending chills racing along my spine. I turned sharply, heart racing, and was met by a figure cloaked in shadows. It was impossible to discern their face, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to feed off the flickering light. You've come to realize what this place truly is. A mirror, a prison, a gateway. Who are you? I croaked, my voice heavy with dread. What do you want from me? What I want is irrelevant, it's what the others want from you that matters. The figure gestured to the walls, where the splatters morphed into faces, twisted, anguished faces that gazed out at me with hopelessness. Their mouths moved in silent screams, their eyes pleading for release. Please, I whispered, desperate to distance myself from the agony captured in those expressions. I just want to go home, home. The figure laughed, a sound sharper than glass, echoing in the depths of my mind. You think you can return after the debt that you owe? Speak to them, you owe it to the very essence of what you are. I felt dizzy as their words settled into my mind, stirring the echoes of those I had wronged, abandoned, and lost. Each name slashed through my consciousness, canvassing a picture of my broken past. I recoiled at the weight of my choices suffocating me, the paralyzing reality of standing among the remnants of my failures. Join us. The cacophony surrounded me, coiling tightly, fangs gnashing with anticipation. Embrace what you are. Be reborn in dark glory. Before I could respond, a sickening crack split the air, and the room tempest-ed with darkness, the walls squeezing tight around me. I could barely breathe. Desperation clawed at my throat as a disembodied laugh echoed from every direction, haunting and full of triumph. With a wrenching push, I staggered forward, refusing to yield to the surreal terror that enveloped me. In the distance, I caught a fleeting glimpse of an exit, a sliver of dim light, beckoning me like a siren. Hope surged in my chest, and with frantic determination, I started towards it, each step threatening to drag me back into despair. But the shadows writhed and twisted, reaching out to trip me, to pull me back into the depths of my torment. The haunting voices rose to a crescendo as they joined together in a manic chant, harmonizing in a dissonance of loss. You are one of us. You cannot escape. I stumbled, and the figure from before materialized once more, standing defiantly in my path. It raised a hand, and the ground trembled as darkness erupted from beneath us. Shadowy tendrils shot up, snaking around my legs like serpents, tightening their grip, dragging me down. No! Let me go! My screams dissolved into the cacophony, my resolve faltering. But the more I struggled, the tighter their grip became. I fell to my knees, gasping as remnants of my past crept closer. Suddenly, I noticed a flicker in the darkness, the fragmented essence of faces I recognized, friends, family, all the lost souls reflecting my guilt and shame in their hollow gazes. Their hands reached toward me, and I could see their mouths moving, pleading, begging, and the air around me throbbed with an unyielding cacophony of voices that rose to a fever pitch. Do not abandon us again. They screamed together, a distant echo reverberating through the air, igniting a newfound dread in me. It was then that I realized that they were not merely passive reflections of my past, they were the summoners of this nightmare, feeding on my emotional torment, demanding my surrender. Please, I gasped, the darkness urging me into submission. I need to make this right. But before I could finish my thought, a mouth formed in the shadows below, monstrous and vile, whispering the chilling truth. Embrace us, or become us. Panic gripped my heart. I looked up to the exit, the dim light glimmering, pulling me beyond the reach of the encroaching darkness. Summoning every ounce of strength left in me, I propelled myself toward it, the weight of my choice crashing over me like a tidal wave. Yet before I could reach that light, a deafening roar erupted, drowning out every sound I had ever known, shaking the very foundation of this dark hell. I stopped short, caught between dimensions, feeling the grip of shadows slacken as the scream merged into a singular, piercing note that resonated through my very being, and then there was silence. When my vision cleared, I saw the walls recede, folding into themselves as the air turned frigid. The darkness outside was thickening, pooling beneath me like a living entity. It was then I felt it, a presence looming right behind me, its breath hot and rancid. "Welcome home," it whispered, an unresolved tension seeping into the fabric of my soul, and I could only turn back, face the familiar horror, as memories long buried began to claw their way back into the light. Then, I vanished. I plunged into a world devoid of sense, surrounded by the stench of decay and the echoes of a long-lost existence. My mind teetered on the brink of comprehension, colliding with fragments of memories I couldn't grasp. I floated through an empty void where the air felt thick, charged with palpable dread and unseen eyes watching my every move. "Welcome home," the voice crooned again, this time laced with mockery, as if the shadows themselves reveled in my torment. My heartbeat quickened, pounding against my ribcage, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive silence. I felt as though every shadow now possessed an intent hungry for my fear, eager to consume me. A dim light flickered in the distance, pulsing like a heartbeat. I gasped, recognizing it as the same beacon I had seen before, an illusory hope amidst insurmountable despair. But this time, I was not alone. Out of the corners of my vision, figures began to coalesce, specters of disbelief, laughter spilling forth from ghostly mouths, too sharp and invasive to be mere figments of my imagination. "Look who decided to join us," chirped a voice with the taint of mockery. The figure stepped forward, revealing a hollow face that mirrored my own, a mockery of my past self twisted into something grotesque. It grinned widely, stretching its mouth impossibly wide, exposing rows of jagged, stained teeth. "You always wanted to be part of our family, didn't you?" "No," I shrieked, the sound shattering the suffocating silence. I staggered backwards, the walls of the realm shifting, their surfaces alive with grotesque motifs of longing and sorrow etched in shadows. My vision swam with panic, and I turned to run, but the pulse of the void pulled me closer to the specters, their laughter mingling into an unsettling symphony of madness. "Join us. You can't escape your true self," they chanted, their voices weaving together like a dark tapestry. I could feel their words vibrating through my bones, awakening an instinct deep within me I had buried beneath layers of denial. Each accusation echoed, "Coward, traitor, lost soul." The world around me twisted yet again, coiling into a spiral that plummeted into darkness. I collated snapshots of my life, moments of weakness and despair flashing before me, a cruel parade of my failures. An overwhelming urge to overpower this creature clawed at my insides. Then came the sound, wrapping around me like chains forged from my own insecurities, a gurgling, chittering that beckoned from the depths. I turned just in time to see a doorway manifest from the shadows, surrounded by writhing forms. The faces of those I had wronged emerged from the obscurity, their ethereal bodies stretching toward me, fingers outstretched, mouths moving without sound. "They need you," the hollow-eyed replica said, and the silence fell heavy as I felt reality teeter beneath my feet. "They need to be set free." My heart raced, pounding against the walls of my rib cage as my instincts screamed of danger. The distorted figures engulfed the space around me, screaming without sound, their words wrought from anguish and desperation. "Help us." Their lips formed in haunting syncopation. "No. You're just a trick," I shouted, the panic igniting my will to flee. Yet as I spun back toward the grim light, it flickered violently, revealing another creature, a monstrous amalgamation of all I feared, echoing my self-doubt, anger and despair. "Do you know what happens if you leave?" It hissed, its voice crawling through my mind. "You'll go back to being nothing. No one will remember you." The memory of my isolation cut deep, a reminder of how easily I had slipped into anonymity. My chest tightened as I weighed the pull of the doorway against the abyss of the darkness. But before I could react, shadowy tendrils erupted from the ground, sinuous and vile. They curled around my legs and began dragging me down, ashes of torment and regret swirling in their wake. "Embrace your past," the hollow voice taunted, "or be forever lost." In that moment, clarity erupted within the chaos, fueled by desperation. I forced myself to focus, to gather every ounce of strength, and summoned a single thought amidst the cacophony: I wasn't going to succumb to the darkness. Not today. With renewed determination, I thrust my arms outward, breaking free of the grasping shadows, and raced towards the door. Light surged forward, enveloping me, even as the creatures behind me shrieked anguished declarations that rattled through the chamber. I plummeted through the doorway, into a tunnel of light, but as I breached the threshold, I felt a searing pain at my back, a sharp, breaking sensation like glass shattering against my skin. The darkness surged forward, enveloping the light, swallowing me whole. I felt my heart throbbing wildly as I was thrust into the void once more. But this time, I landed at the edge of a vast cemetery, the gravestones towering around me like sentinels keeping watch over the lost. It began to rain, thick drops falling like tears from the heavens, and I suddenly felt the chill of reality piercing through the fabric of my soul. Then, through the fog of the mist-cloaked graveyard, I heard it again, the haunting whisper. "Come and find us, come and find your truth." It was coming from the shadows between the graves, beckoning me to answer the call of my darkness, where the air resonated with the cries of those who had been left to rot. And there, amidst the ethereal mists, I saw figures emerging, faces familiar yet twisted by grief. It was then that I noticed a single gravestone glimmering even in the rain. The name inscribed there sent a chill down my spine: "Here lies what was lost." Before I could comprehend its meaning, the ground beneath me began to tremble. Everything went black. I awoke to a drumming sound, the echo reverberating against the stones beneath me, as if 1,000 heartbeats had fused into one. My mind was shrouded in a haze, struggles threading together broken memories that danced in the periphery, flickers of dread clawing their way back into focus. As I tried to rise, a sharp pain shot through my body, reminding me that I was very much alive but immersed in a nightmare that had morphed into something tangible. I gasped, pulling myself upright, feeling the weight of the oppressive darkness pressing down upon me. Around me, towering gravestones stood like grim sentinels, their surfaces slick with rain and decay. The air tasted metallic, sharp against my tongue. It was thick with the echoes of 1,000 wails of sorrow that snaked through me like poison. My heart was hammering as I scanned the cemetery, recognizing the familiar contours of despair that bore stark similarities to the hallway of shadows I had just escaped. "No more shadows," I whispered urgently, the determination hardening in my chest. My pulse raced, a frenzied rhythm that echoed the warped tales of my past, but I had to break free. Each gravestone loomed large against the backdrop of howling winds, some inscribed with cryptic messages that poured electric fear down my spine. "Forgotten," one read. "Lost," proclaimed another. "You are trapped," was etched on the ground beneath my feet, spiraling out like the roots of a cursed tree. "Find the truth," the whisper returned, curling around my consciousness like smoke as I stumbled forward, compelled by the primal urge to flee. Flee toward what? I wasn't sure, but I could feel eyes within the fog, watching with malignant anticipation, waiting for me to falter. Just beyond the grave markers, the shadows danced in erratic patterns, twisting and contorting under the muted glow of the moon's sickly light. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to run from whatever loomed on the edges of the darkness, but curiosity coupled with terror propelled me forward. Each step took me further into the maw of the graveyard, into the biting tendrils of history that clung to my skin like grime, the way whispered secrets lingered in the ears of the damned. Then I saw her, a ghostly figure emerging amid the treacherous fog, her spectral form gliding over the damp ground like a shred of mist. Anna. I wanted to scream her name, but the air thickened in my throat, suffocating my desires. Her eyes glinted with both accusation and mercy, pulling me as if the distance between us was an illusion of my own making. "You returned," she breathed, her voice trailing off like smoke in the night. My heart twisted painfully as I tried to bridge the gap. I thought I lost you. I rasped, each word a desperate clawing against the weight of my own remorse. Help me. I can't be in this place. Help you? She echoed with a twisted smile, dark undertones sharpening each syllable. Do you not see? This is exactly where you belong. You, too, are part of the shadows. I am bound to this realm, and so are you. Chills raced through me, her words cutting deeper than the chill in the air. No. I left this, whatever this is, behind. I can't be part of this darkness. I shouted defiantly, my voice tremoring with the upheaval of my fear. But her laughter reminded me of curses laid deep within the earth, weaving a tapestry of lost souls who had prayed for something greater. Then face what you've done. Her smile faded into something more sinister. You thought you could escape, but we are all here. You knew the truth all along. The fog coalesced around me like a tainted curtain, and the shadows swarmed, converging from every corner, grasping at my limbs, furious revelations dancing across the surfaces of the gravestones. Memories cascaded over me like raindrops, the shouting, the broken promises, the loss. The sun always faded earlier on those nights, igniting morbid reminders of what I had swept to the edges of my consciousness. Say their names, and set us free, Anna's voice commanded, laced with insidious promise, soft yet insistent. We are the remnants of what you cast aside. Face your reality, then choose. The ground trembled beneath me, a spectral chorus of voices rising from the graves. Help us. They chanted, the wails of the forgotten rising to a deafening crescendo. With every name I swung around me, friends, my family, the ones I had betrayed, their faces twisted in anguish, beckoning for pain-free absolution, yet wrapped in the chains of what I had done. Why? Why did I leave? I was crying now, helplessness surged within me, flooding every barrier that once formed my identity. Forgive me. I was trying to protect myself. I didn't know. The figures pressed against the veil of shadows, letting out anguished sighs that threatened to drown me. Anna's form began to waver like an old film reel playing on repeat, but the truth flickered within the chaos, the memories melding into grotesque shapes that morphed into silence. You are irrevocably changed, Anna whispered, eyes narrowed with a zeal I could hardly comprehend. You think you can absolve history with regret? Speak their names, acknowledge their existence, or remain shackled by the shadows forever. The voices started to chant louder, me family, my friends, the laughter and pain pooled together in a haunting symphony. Pushing against the tide of mounting terror, I fell to my knees, my voice trembling, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have said something. With each confession, names surged forth. Josh. Evan, Rebecca. I remember the atmosphere surged with potency, my voice bridging realms of sorrow and longing, the shadows holding their breath. I could feel them tightening their grip, but something changed with each name. Tendrils of shadow began to recede, loosening as light dared to creep in where boundaries once formed. Set them free, Anna urged, her form flickering like candlelight. You can end this. My heart pounded violently in my chest as I named them again. Anna, I should have saved you. I could have. The shadows shrieked, a wave of wailing crashing into me, tugging me toward the edges of my fractured past. A spectral hand reached for mine, the warmth of a dream long lost igniting within me, offering a sliver of hope, but Anna's laughter hitched and morphed into a guttural growl as she lunged at me, fixing her gaze with malevolence. You think you can run away? You are thick with their despair. You are as much a part of this as they are. No. I screamed, fueled by a sudden surge of defiance. I will not condone this horror. No more shadows. Just as I pushed forward, reckless with fear and courage, the world tilted once more, and I found myself standing at the grave, a sudden burst of rage igniting like fire within. The gravestone flickered, its inscription blurring until it formed a new truth, a single name standing alone against the tide of despair. Anna, that's not who I am anymore. With that, I struck against the blurring image before me, feeling both the light and dark merging as my voice boomed, "I release you." And in a flash, the world around me exploded, the shadows receding, swallowed by blinding light. I felt it wrapping around me, caressing my spirit as warmth flooded my body, freeing me from the bondage of fear, the echoing screams of despair merging into collective silence. As I stood within the radiant light, I gasped, feeling unshackled for the first time. But shadows crept at the edge of my consciousness, whispering one simple phrase, a reminder of what lay in wait: "Well done, dear soul, but remember, darkness never truly relinquishes its hold." And that lingering threat bled into my thoughts, wrapping around me as I turned to leave, sending chills racing down my spine as the echoes of shattered past called out, ready to claim what had been lost. As I took my first step toward the horizon, the creeping sensation returned, stealing the warmth of the light I had fought to reclaim. The shadows had merely shifted, patiently waiting, and with each step I realized that some shadows only linger, disguising themselves within our hearts. As I turned to face them, a single truth settled in my bones, curling with terror: the ghosts of my past were still lurking unseen, waiting for the moment I would falter. And perhaps their hunger would never die.